Will the Iran war really be over in the next weeks? That's what members of the Trump administration are saying. I'm David Levitz, and I'll be talking to Aaron David Miller, senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, focusing on U.S. foreign policy. He's also a former Middle East negotiator for the U.S. Aaron, good to see you.
David, it's great to be here.
Now, just a little while ago, U.S. Special Envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, implied that there could be face-to-face talks between the U.S. and Iran in the next days, or at least that's what he's pushing for. I want to listen to what he said and then get your reaction. Here's Steve Witkoff.
Well, my definition of real negotiating would be right here, and we don't leave until we're done. And we've offered that, and we think there will be meetings this week. We're certainly hopeful for it. Ships are passing. That's a very, very good sign. And I think the president wants a peace deal. But he also believes in and I believe in it too, peace through strength. Without pressure, you never get anybody to the table.
So, Aaron, what are the chances that Iran and the U.S. are going to be at the same table or even in the same building in the next days?
I think the chances are slim to none. Look, you can have a meeting. Steve Witkoff's right about one thing. You cannot deal with this issue on the back of a cocktail napkin or on a cell phone or directly through mediators. You now have an international crisis. It's not going to be resolved in a day. It's not going to be resolved in a week. David, I think you and I will probably be here next month at this time having the same conversation. Right now, Stephen Witkoff, Jared Kushner, President Trump, they're not keeping the clock. The Iranians are keeping the clock. Because whether they're delusional or not, the Iranians believe they're winning. And any negotiation, Witkoff must understand this, you need a shared sense of urgency on the part of the two combatants. I don't think you have a shared sense of urgency now. I think the Iranians are prepared to absorb a lot more pain and impose a lot more of it on the Gulf and on the international economy. They can't match the Israelis or the Americans. They have escalation dominance. But they've turned geography into a weapon, and they've deployed it extremely artfully and tragically.
Right. We heard Witkoff
tonight against Sultan Air Base in Saudi. 2 seriously injured American servicemen. A number of others very seriously injured, and a number seriously injured. So I don't think Trump is in control of the clock.
Witkoff was saying there you have to pressure people to the table. I believe his words were peace through strength. You're saying that's not going to work and that the Iranians are just not feeling the pressure?
I think that pain and gain are instrumental in terms of creating urgency, which is what usually gets people to the table in a serious mood to negotiate. I just think that right now, the Iranians believe they're imposing a more serious cost on the Gulf states and on the international economy. And they don't see the prospects of gain. The Trump administration, on the other hand, seems to be willing, as the Iranians are, to keep up the pressure. So right now, you don't have a shared sense of urgency. We're drifting. And if we're drifting, I suspect military ops is in our future in an effort to change the Iranian calculation. This is what the Trump administration, I think, believes needs to be done to convince the Iranians they're not winning. That could take some doing, and it could involve significant risks. So, no, I think this war is not going to be over in a week. It's not going to be over in 2 weeks. The average length of an interstate conflict since 1815 is 3 months. As I mentioned, I think you and I will be having this conversation a month from now.
Iran has lost its supreme leader. It is being bombed. What would it take for Iran to feel like it was losing or feel the urgency, as you say, to get out of this conflict?
I don't think I can't imagine a scenario that the U.S. is prepared to impose militarily. And clearly, the Americans are not prepared, understandably, to offer incentives. If you look at the president's 15-point plan and you look at the Iranians' 5-point response, the gaps here are not just as big as the Grand Canyon. They're galactic. So if you don't have two parties who are in a hurry, which you don't, and you don't have a reasonable chance of concluding an agreement that meets each side's needs and requirements, which right now you don't have, then you drift. Then you have what I call performative negotiations, what Witkoff is talking about. Through the Turks, through the Pakistanis, trying to schedule a meeting here, a phone call there. That's not going to get you over the finish line. And frankly, David, I don't think I could identify an exit ramp right now that would end this conflict.
Yeah, I'm surprised that you say that there's no urgency on the U.S. side either, because it seems like there are a lot of reasons for the U.S. administration to want to get out of this war. It's driving up prices, it's hurting Trump's approval rating, and the U.S. is also going through its missiles stockpile at a rate that reportedly is alarming to the Pentagon. So what is keeping Trump and the U.S. in this war and stopping them from just declaring victory and getting out now?
Well, if all of the things you said were actually having an impact, then you would see some effort by the administration. And I don't think you've seen that. You saw the cabinet meeting yesterday. The president says we don't need the straits open. He said I think at one point, I don't care about this. He said I'm bored. I mean, you're not dealing with a president. You're dealing with a president who's focused on money, glory, and power. You're not dealing with a president who has a clear conception of the American national interest.
Well,
he's deployed his son-in-law and his best friend to negotiate not just this, but Russia-Ukraine, Israel-Palestine. I mean, it defies convention and it defies common sense. You don't have a structure that makes sense. And that's why the Iranians, and I find this truly head exploding. The Iranians, at their request, you now have Vice President Vance mentioned as a possible negotiator, not because Trump wanted him in, but because the Iranians are picking who they want to negotiate with. It is an extraordinary amount of dysfunction.
You're saying that the U.S. efforts are performative in terms of negotiations. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said not long ago that he actually doesn't think the end of the war is far off. I'd like to play a clip of what he had to say.
This is not going to be a prolonged conflict, but we can achieve all of our objectives with our ground troops. We are on or ahead of schedule in that operation and expect to conclude it at the appropriate time here in a matter of weeks, not months.
Weeks, not months. You're saying that Rubio's bluffing?
I just don't know. I don't know on what basis he makes that assessment. Achieve all of our objectives. Opening the Straits of Hormuz was not an initial war objective. It became one because a war of choice has now become a war of necessity. I don't see how you open up the Straits unless you're prepared to negotiate their reopening, or alternatively, you're prepared to mount a military operation that will involve scores of thousands of American boots on the ground, a third of the U.S. Navy, 2 carrier strike groups, and an enormous amount of time. Every military commander, general, I've heard speak on this lately, have basically said that can't be done. And it's risky even to try. So I guess the question would be, are we close to achieving our military objective in opening up the Straits? By the way, the Straits are not closed. The Iranians have just made a decision to who to grant preferential access to. So I don't see this ending in a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, because the diplomatic pathway to me seems to be blocked for any number of reasons. Also, partly because right now I don't think the Iranians are interested in the negotiation. And the military options here are very risky.
So escalating is dangerous. Pulling out is not in the administration's real interest, if I hear you correctly, to follow your argument. Well, is this leading to a forever war, the kind that Trump said he didn't want?
I think if the president tomorrow said that we won, I'm standing down, there isn't a constituency in this country that he cares about that would do anything else other than breathe a collective sigh of relief. If the Iranians stood down, you could find a way out. But that, if the war stopped today, in my judgment, it is a strategic defeat for the United States.
Let's talk
Not
about
a tactical defeat, a strategic defeat.
Let's talk about the depletion of U.S. missile stockpiles, both in terms of Tomahawk missiles, but also air defense missiles that protect U.S. bases and partners in the region. Some analysts say the U.S. has gone through about a quarter of its total supply of Tomahawks, and that it could take months or even years to replenish those supplies. Do you think, I think I know what you're going to say, but I want to hear it from you. Do you think the U.S. made a massive miscalculation with this war?
Massive miscalculation. I think that the president found a solution to a problem we didn't have. Not that Iran is not a problem. It's a brutal, repressive, authoritarian regime. It's a nuclear weapons threshold state. It has all the elements required probably to assemble a nuclear weapon. The question is, did the president make the right decision in striking Iran now? And after a month, it seems to me there have been two fundamental miscalculations. One, that the Iranians would capitulate in the face of American escalation dominance. And second, the regime, however hollowed out, however decapitated its senior leadership, including the supreme leader, would somehow fracture. Or you'd see elements within the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps or the career military that would emerge to challenge those who wanted to continue the war. And you'd have scores of thousands of Iranians out in the streets, and the Basiji or the IRGC would refuse to fire on the crowds. And somehow, out of all this would emerge an Iranian Delcy Rodriguez, with whom the United States could do business. My colleague at Carnegie, Karim Sajapur, believes what the administration has created is an Iranian Kim Jong-un. And not just one Iranian Kim Jong-un, several. So do I think it was a miscalculation? A month in, I don't see how anyone could reach the conclusion that it wasn't.
Aaron, one of the big questions surrounding an end to the Iran war is if Israel would continue the war without the U.S. How do you see that playing out?
I think this president has enormous leverage over Benjamin Netanyahu, in large part because the most important event in 2026 is elections in Israel, whether the government goes to term in October or whether elections are advanced to the spring or early summer. Benjamin Netanyahu needs Donald Trump as an active campaigner. Trump is more popular in Israel than he is, and Netanyahu is vulnerable. So when President Trump says the war will end, Netanyahu will say, yes, sir.
Aaron, if you were a betting man, when and how would you say this war will end?
You know, David, not even Pythia, the famed oracle at Delphi, reading the finest of goat entrails, can answer your question. I think we're talking weeks. What is it, March 27th? I'm thinking sometime end of April, early May. Maybe we'll see a break, some sort of break. But no, there's a lot of water under that still needs to flow, sadly, under the bridge.
Aaron David Miller, thanks so much for your time and your insights.
David, thanks for having me.
So what do you think? Will the Iran war be over soon? Let us know in the comments. And if you like this video, please hit that like button. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe.